Hello. If you can stay with me until the end of this conversation, you will have the tools you need to help prevent an ischemic stroke. When you hear the term stroke, what symptoms immediately come to mind? If you're like most people, you probably picture what you've seen in movies or on television. You imagine someone suddenly collapsing, the entire side of their face drooping, their speech becoming an unintelligible slurry of words, unable to get their thoughts out. And, of course, these are absolutely critical, classic symptoms of a stroke. They are the red alert, 5 alarm fire signs that everyone should know. But what if I told you that long before that dramatic, terrifying moment, a much quieter, more subtle set of warning signs often begins in a completely different part of your body? My name is Dr. Alan Cole. For over 2 decades, I have worked as a research neurologist in the United States, treating thousands of patients. In that time, while reviewing the cases of countless stroke victims, I discovered a shocking and consistent commonality. I found a place where, long before the textbook symptoms of facial droop or language difficulty ever appeared, a series of very small, very subtle, and very specific signs were already making themselves known. That place was the feet. The fact is, a stroke often signals its dangerous approach from your feet long before it ever touches your face. This is the critical conclusion I have drawn from nearly a quarter-century of clinical experience. Again and again, my patients would confide in me, telling me things like, "Doctor, now that I think about it, for a few weeks, maybe even months, before I collapsed, my walking felt a little off. I would have these strange moments where my leg would just give out, for no reason. I kept feeling like the sole of my foot was numb, like it was asleep. These tiny sensations, a faint tingling like ants marching across the skin, and a moment of inexplicable stumbling on a perfectly flat sidewalk, these were the brain's first desperate distress calls. Tragically, almost all of us ignore these signals. We dismiss them as a natural, unavoidable part of life. We tell ourselves, "I'm just tired," or "I'm not getting enough exercise," or, the most common and most dangerous one of all, "I'm just getting older." And in that moment of dismissal, in that simple, self-reassuring explanation, we are wasting the last, precious, golden window of time we were given before the blood vessel in our brain finally, catastrophically, clogs. If you stay with me through this entire discussion today, I am confident that you will come to a profound realization. My God, my feet have been trying to tell me the state of my brain's health this whole time. And more importantly, you will learn the specific, concrete methods to recognize these signals for what they are, allowing you to prevent a tragedy that could change your life forever. Before we begin in earnest, I have to make a very honest confession. The patient stories I just mentioned, the ones I observed as a doctor, they aren't just the dispassionate observations of a third party. Woven into those stories, into that pattern of discovery, is my own direct, personal experience. Yes, that's right. I am a neurologist who has treated countless patients with brain diseases, and I, myself, experienced the pre-stroke warning signs. It happened several years ago. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. I woke up, and as I swung my legs out of bed to sit up, I felt a strange, non-feeling in my right leg. It was a bizarre, heavy disconnect. It felt the way your arm feels after you've slept on it wrong all night. That dull, heavy, pins and needles sensation. Only it was my entire leg. It felt like a dead weight, as if it were carved from wet sand. That's odd, I thought. I shook it off and headed to the bathroom. As I went to stand up from the toilet, my body lurched to the right. My right leg just didn't seem to have the strength to take my full weight, and I had to catch myself on the sink. Later that day, on my way to the hospital, I was walking on a sidewalk I've walked on 1,000 times. Suddenly, my right toe caught the edge of a perfectly normal, barely raised paving stone. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't on my phone. My foot just didn't lift high enough. I lunged forward, my briefcase swinging, my heart leaping into my throat. I just barely caught myself from pitching forward onto my hands and knees. A jolt of cold panic shot through me, but almost immediately, The expert in me was silenced by the busy human in me. I desperately reassured myself. I must have just been exhausted last night. Wow. I really am getting older. My muscles just aren't what they used to be. And just like that, I rationalized it, compartmentalized it, and buried the memory under the crushing weight of my busy, demanding, everyday life. Even with all my medical training, even as a neurologist who tells patients every single day to watch for these signs, when my own body's warning light came on, my first instinct was to ignore it. I was, in that moment, just a normal, frightened person in denial. But that strange symptom didn't just happen once. It kept coming back to visit, once or twice a week. I'd be walking down the hospital corridor, and for just a second, my right leg would feel like it was going to buckle. Or I'd notice that my right foot was scuffing the floor, a sound I'd never made before. My brain knew I was walking, but my foot just wasn't quite obeying the command to lift. It was only then, after the repetition, that a cold dread finally cut through my denial. I realized something is very, very wrong. I, who had built a career on warning patients not to ignore the smallest signs, had been actively ignoring the blaring alarm bells in my own body. I finally, sheepishly, asked a colleague to order an MRI of my brain. I lay in that cold, loud tube, the rhythmic whump 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 of the machine echoing in my ears, my heart pounding with a fear I hadn't allowed myself to feel until that moment. And when we pulled up the images on the glowing monitor, my colleague pointed, and my breath caught. There it was, a minuscule, hazy spot on the left side of my brain, a tiny, ischemic lesion, a place where, for a brief time, blood supply had been choked off, and a tiny part of my brain tissue had begun to die. It was the final warning before a massive stroke. It was, by definition, a transient ischemic attack. A thanks in advance. What if I hadn't had that medical knowledge? What if I hadn't had a colleague I could turn to? I probably would have dismissed it as my leg acting up or just feeling run down. I might have made an appointment with an orthopedist or a chiropractor, wasting precious weeks or months. And then, one day, I would have collapsed, and I would have woken up in a hospital bed if I woke up at all paralyzed, unable to speak, unable to work, and I would have spent the rest of my life consumed by a singular, devastating regret. This, right here, is the absolute core of our discussion today. If you will stay with me, you will understand the complete picture. You will learn why a problem in your brain, of all places, shows up in your feet, the furthest point away. You will learn exactly which foot-related signs are just muscle soreness or aging, and which are life-threatening emergency signals. Missing this information is something you could truly regret for the rest of your life. What I am about to share is the most vital information I have learned, both from my own terrifying experience and from treating hundreds of patients just like me. I will explain it all, one step at a time, very, very clearly. The silent alarm. Why the brain's cry for help starts in the feet. When a blood vessel heading toward your brain begins to clog, your brain doesn't just sit there silently. It starts to sound an emergency alarm. But the bizarre and counterintuitive truth is that this alarm bell doesn't ring from your mouth or your face. It rings from the part of your body that is geographically farthest away, your feet. This is a physiological fact. The part of your brain that controls movement, the motor cortex, is laid out like a map of your body. The area that controls your face and hands is massive, but the area that controls your feet and legs is located deep within the center of the brain, right along the central sulcus. This area is fed by a specific artery, the anterior cerebral artery, ACA. When plaque builds up, or a tiny clot forms, this specific artery is often one of the first to be affected. Because the blood flow here is so specialized, the very first part of your body to experience the effects of that reduced oxygen and nutrient supply is your leg and foot. The signs in your hands and face, the classic fast face, arms, speech, time symptoms, are often caused by a blockage in a different, larger artery, the middle cerebral artery. The signs I'm about to describe are often the precursor, the whisper from the ACA, Siebel-Ludert, warning you that the entire system is compromised and a bigger stroke is on its way. You must not take these 7 signs lightly. They are not getting old. They are your brain's final warning. The 7 warning signs your feet send before a stroke. Sign 1. Sudden. Unexplained weakness in one leg. This is by far the most common and, unfortunately, the most easily dismissed sign. What it feels like. You are climbing a set of stairs, a task you do every day. You go to lift your leg for the next step, and it suddenly feels like it's made of lead. It just won't respond for a second, and you nearly stumble. Or, as in the case of one of my patients, Mr. Harrison, a 74-year-old man. He was simply getting up from the dining table. He pushed his chair back and went to stand, but his right leg just buckled. It didn't hurt. It just wasn't there. He collapsed back into the chair, confused. He told his wife he must have just stood up too fast. But it happened again 2 days later. This is not general fatigue. When you're tired or overworked, both legs feel heavy. This is a very specific, unilateral weakness. It's one leg, and one leg only. This is the most important clue. Your left brain controls your right body, and your right brain controls your left body. A problem in the left side of your brain, like my thanks in advance, will only show up on the right side of your body. In fact, research from the Mayo Clinic has shown that over 60% of stroke patients who were interviewed later recalled experiencing these exact transient temporary moments of leg weakness in the weeks or months leading up to their major stroke. If you experience this, you must not ignore it. Take out your phone or a notebook and write down the date, the time, which leg it was, and exactly what you were doing. This information is pure gold for a neurologist. Sign 2. Numbness or abnormal sensations in the foot. This is the second most common sign, and it's a tricky one. When people hear foot numbness, they immediately think of 2 things: bad circulation or a pinched nerve in their back sciatica. But the numbness from a brain-related issue is different. It's not just a pins and needles feeling, like your foot fell asleep. It's a sensory deficit. It's a loss of sensation, what it feels like. My patient, Ms. Priya Sharma, a 69-year-old retired teacher, described it perfectly. She said, "Dr. Cole, it felt like I was walking on wads of cotton, or like I was wearing 3 pairs of thick, woolly socks. Even when I was barefoot, the floor beneath her felt distant." She also mentioned that when she stepped out of the shower onto the cold tile floor, she could feel the coldness vividly with her left foot, but her right foot felt dull, as if the cold couldn't quite get through. This is the key. The part of your brain that processes sensation, the sensory cortex, is right next to the motor cortex, and it's fed by the same at-risk blood vessels. When it's starved of oxygen, it can no longer accurately interpret the signals coming from your foot. A report from a leading stroke center in Boston found that nearly 1/3 of their stroke patients reported these specific sensory abnormalities beforehand. Here is a simple test you can do at home. Sit down and close your eyes. Take something with a mild point, like a ballpoint pen with the cap on or a toothpick, very gently. Lightly touch the sole of your left foot, then your right, then your left calf, then your right. Does the sensation feel identical on both sides? Or does one side feel significantly duller, like you're poking a piece of leather instead of skin? If there's a clear mais consiste différence, that is a major red flag. Crucially, how to tell this from a pinched nerve. Numbness from a back issue, sciatica, will often change with your posture. It might get worse when you sit, or better, when you lie down. Numbness from a brain issue is almost always constant. It doesn't care if you're sitting, standing, or lying down. The signal is being lost at the source. Sign 3. Foot drop, dragging or scuffing your foot. This is a sign that the person experiencing it often doesn't notice at all. It's their family who notices it first. What it looks like: when the person walks, one of their feet doesn't lift properly. The toes don't clear the ground, so they end up dragging or scuffing that foot with every step. You might hear it first. A scuff step. Scuff step sound on the hardwood floor or pavement. Mr. David Chen, 76, was brought in by his wife, She was the one who made the appointment. She told me I was polishing his shoes for church, and I realized something bizarre. His left shoe was fine, but the toe of his right shoe was completely worn down, almost through the leather. The sole was all scuffed and frayed. She started watching him walk. He was dragging his right foot. When she pointed it out, he was completely surprised. He'd been blaming his bad hip for months. A small stroke was found in his motor cortex. The signal from his brain to the muscles in his shin, the ones that are supposed to lift his toes up, was being interrupted. That's all foot drop is. It's a failure of a specific brain signal. Research from Johns Hopkins University has highlighted these subtle changes in gait pattern as one of the most reliable early warning signs of neurological decline and stroke risk. So, check the soles of your shoes. Are they worn evenly? Or is one toe, and only one toe, completely scuffed down? Ask your spouse or your children. Be honest. Have you noticed anything strange about the way I walk? It could save your life. Sign 4. Suddenly, stumbling or tripping over nothing. You're in your own home. You're walking down the hallway. You've walked down 10,000 times. There is nothing on the floor. And suddenly, you trip. You lurch forward, catching yourself on the wall. This is not clumsiness. This is a profound failure of your brain's balance and spatial awareness system. When you're walking, your brain is performing millions of calculations every second. It's taking in visual data, processing signals from the inner ear, and sensing the position of your limbs. It then uses this data to plan the exact height and distance of your next step. When a part of the brain responsible for this coordination, especially the cerebellum, located at the back of the brain, is starved of blood, this system breaks down. You might see the carpet edge, but your brain fails to compute the command to lift foot 0.5 inches, and your toe catches. Mrs. Rebecca Morales, T.R., came to me after she had already fallen 3 times in her own kitchen. The last fall resulting in a fractured wrist. Her family just thought, Mom's getting frail. They bought her a walker, but it wasn't frailty. It was her cerebellum, which is fed by the basilar and vertebral arteries, another common site for blockages. A prominent research group in Berlin found that in a group of elderly patients who reported recurrent, unexplained falls, over 40% showed significantly reduced blood flow in this exact part of the brain. We dismiss falls as a normal part of aging, but if you are suddenly tripping over flat surfaces, thresholds, or small rugs that you've navigated your whole life, that is not your legs failing, that is your brain failing. You are ignoring a direct warning, and you may be running out of time. Sign 5. Tremors or involuntary jerking movements. Are you ever sitting quietly, perhaps watching television or reading a book, and you notice that one of your feet is vibrating? A small, rhythmic tremor, or maybe your toes will suddenly jerk or twitch all on their own. Of course, we all get temporary muscle twitches from fatigue, stress, or too much caffeine, but those are usually random and go away with rest. This is different. This is a consistent, often rhythmic tremor or a repeated involuntary jerk that appears at rest and always on the same side. Mr. Jackson, T-shirt, came to me because his left foot would shake every evening when he sat in his recliner. It's driving me crazy. Doc, he said, he thought he was low on magnesium, so he'd been taking supplements for months. But it didn't help. This kind of resting tremor or clonus jerking can be a sign that the brain's control system is being disrupted. The part of the brain called the basal ganglia acts like a cruise control system for your movements, smoothing them out and filtering out noise. When its blood supply is cut, that filter fails. Faulty electrical signals get sent down the spinal cord to the foot, resulting in a tremor or twitch that you can't control. The American Neurological Association has published findings that over 30% of patients experiencing blood flow disruptions report some kind of movement disorder, including tremors and involuntary jerks. If a new, persistent tremor or twitch appears in one foot or leg, and it doesn't go away with rest, it's not a muscle thing. It's time to think about your brain. Sign 6. Loss of balance, swaying or leaning to one side. This is distinct from the tripping of sign 4. This is a feeling of general, persistent unsteadiness. As if you're standing on the deck of a moving boat. What it feels like, you feel like you're walking drunk. Even though you haven't had a drop of alcohol, you find yourself constantly drifting to one side, or needing to put a hand on the wall just to walk in a straight line. This is especially common in the morning. Mr. Grant, 75, told me he dreaded getting out of bed. Every morning. Dr. Cole, the second my feet hit the floor, the whole room just feels tilted. I have to stand there for a good 30 seconds, holding on to the nightstand just to get my bearings. Why the morning? The American Heart Association notes that strokes are most common in the early morning hours. As you wake up, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, releasing hormones that cause your blood pressure to surge. If you already have a narrowed, diseased artery in your brain, it simply cannot handle that morning surge of pressure and flow. The result is a dizzy or off-balance feeling as the brain struggles to get the oxygen it needs. Now, this is not the same as the brief head rush you get from standing up too fast. That's called orthostatic hypotension, and it lasts for a few seconds. This is a feeling of instability that persists. It's a feeling that your equilibrium is broken. That is, once again, a classic sign of a problem in the cerebellum or brainstem. Sign 7. The thanks in advance, symptoms that appear, then disappear. This is the most important, and by far the most dangerous, sign of all. This is when you experience one of the signs we just discussed: sudden leg weakness, numbness, loss of balance, and it is intense. It's terrifying. You can't feel your foot. You can't move your leg. You collapse. And then, 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes later, it's gone. Completely gone. The feeling comes back. The strength returns. You can stand up. You can walk. You are 100% normal again. You shake. You're terrified. But your first thought is, I'm okay. Whatever that was, it passed. I dodged a bullet. You did not dodge a bullet. You just received a warning shot fired at point-blank range. This is a transient ischemic attack, thanks in advance. Or a mini-stroke. And the name mini-stroke is a terrible, dangerously. It is not mini. It is a full-blown stroke that your body just happened to fix on its own. A clot formed, blocked the artery, caused the symptoms, and then, by pure chance, it dissolved or moved before it could cause permanent brain death. Mr. Samuel Bishop, 75, had this exact experience. He was in his garden. His right leg went completely numb and dead for about 20 minutes. He sat on the grass, terrified. And then, it just faded away. He felt fine. He was so relieved that he didn't tell anyone. He just went about his day. 3 days later, he collapsed from a massive, devastating stroke. He was rushed to my hospital. When we did the MRI, we saw the new, massive damage. But we also saw the old damage, a tiny, dead spot from the thanks in advance he'd had 3 days earlier. He survived, but he lost most of the use of his right side. His life was permanently altered. Listen to this statistic, and please, never forget it. According to research, a staggering 75% of people who have a thanks in advance will go on to have a full, major stroke within 3 months. A thanks in advance is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is the final, screaming alarm from your body. It is your brain telling you, a catastrophe is imminent. The system is failing. The next one will be permanent. If you ever experience a symptom like this, even if it lasts for only 60 seconds and then vanishes, you do not wait and see. You do not take a nap. You call 911. You go to the emergency room immediately. Going to the ER after a thanks in advance, when you feel fine, is the single greatest chance you have to prevent the major, life-ending stroke that is almost certainly on its way. Your 5-step battle plan, how to prevent the stroke before it starts. Recognizing the warning signs I just described is half the battle. The other half is ensuring those signs never appear in the first place. A stroke doesn't just happen one day. It is the predictable, tragic result of years, even decades, of silent, cumulative damage. It is the end product of a lifestyle. But the good news is that this means it is largely preventable. The 5 practical strategies I'm about to give you are not difficult or special. They are the bedrock of vascular health, but whether you follow them or not will, quite literally, decide the future of your brain and the rest of your life. Blood pressure management. The first and last line of defense. Think of high blood pressure as a constant, hammering force inside your delicate arteries. This relentless pressure scours and damages the smooth inner lining of your blood vessels, the endothelium. It's like taking sandpaper to the inside of a soft, pliable tube. Once that lining is damaged, it becomes rough and scarred. And just like on a rough road, it's easy for things to get stuck. Cholesterol, fat, and cellular waste plaque begin to stick to these damaged areas, narrowing the artery. This is atherosclerosis. A stroke is what happens when that artery narrows completely, or a piece of that plaque breaks off and plugs the vessel. Therefore, managing your blood pressure is not optional. It is essential. You must pay special attention to your morning blood pressure. As I mentioned, when you wake up, your body releases stress hormones to get you going. This morning, surge causes your blood pressure to spike. If your arteries are already narrowed, this is prime time for a stroke. Your action plan: get a home blood pressure cuff. Every single morning. Before coffee, before food, before medication. Wake up and go to the bathroom. Sit quietly in a chair with your feet flat on the floor for 5 full minutes. No talking. Notivu. Just breathe. Take your blood pressure and write it down. Your goal for this morning reading should be a systolic pressure, the top number consistently below 130, and a diastolic bottom number below 80. Bring this log to every single doctor's appointment. It is the most valuable piece of data you can possibly provide. Blood sugar management. The anti-stickiness strategy. High blood sugar is, in the simplest terms, like having hot, sticky syrup flowing through your veins instead of blood. This thick, sugary blood does 2 terrible things. It damages the artery walls directly through a process called glycation, making them inflamed, brittle, and even more prone to plaque buildup. It makes the blood itself stickier, encouraging your platelets to clump together and form clots more easily. This is precisely why people with diabetes have a 2 to 3-fold higher risk of stroke than the general population. Your action plan. Your fasting blood sugar in the morning, before eating, should be under 100 mg/dl. Your blood sugar 2 hours after a meal should be under 140 mg/dl. This is not just about medication. It is fundamentally about food. You must reduce your intake of fast sugars and processed carbohydrates. White bread, white rice, pasta, sodas, and baked goods. These foods dump sugar into your bloodstream like a fire hose. Instead, prioritize slow carbs like whole grains, vegetables, and legumes, which release sugar slowly. And here's a pro tip. A simple 15-minute walk within 30 to 60 minutes after a meal is one of the most powerful ways to help your muscles soak up that sugar from your blood, dramatically lowering the spike. Cholesterol management. The artery's janitorial service. Cholesterol isn't inherently bad. Your body needs it. But there are 2 very different types, and you need to know them like you know your own family. LDL, low-density lipoprotein. This is the bad cholesterol. Think of it as the lousy or vandal cholesterol. It's the sticky, oily gunk that sticks to your artery walls, forming the plaque that causes blockages. HDL, high-density lipoprotein. This is the good cholesterol. Think of it as the healthy or janitor cholesterol. Its job is to travel through your bloodstream, find the bad LDL, and clean it up, carrying it back to your liver to be disposed of. Your goal is simple. Lower your LDL, raise your HDL. Your action plan. You lower LDL by removing certain fats from your diet. This means trans fats found in many processed foods, pastries, and fried items, and saturated fats found in fatty cuts of red meat, butter, and palm oil. You raise HDL by adding healthy fats. This means omega-3 seconds from fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, monounsaturated fats, avocados, olive oil, and soluble fiber oats, beans, apples, and nuts. Ask yourself, is your current diet clogging your arteries or cleaning them? SID. Consistent exercise. The ultimate vascular tonic. Exercise does more than just control your weight. It is a powerful medicine for your blood vessels. When you engage in consistent aerobic exercise like a brisk walk, your heart beats stronger, pushing blood through your entire body. This sheer force of blood flow stimulates the cells lining your arteries, the endothelium, to produce a magical molecule, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It tells your arteries to relax, to widen, and to become more pliable and elastic. This directly lowers your blood pressure and improves your circulation from your head to your toes. Exercise also helps your body manage blood sugar, raise your good HDL cholesterol, and floods your brain with feel-good chemicals that reduce stress. It is the single most effective pill for managing all your stroke risk factors at once. Your action plan. You do not need to run a marathon. The most recommended, most studied, and most effective exercise is simply a brisk walk. Aim for at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. What is brisk? You should be able to talk, but not sing. You should feel slightly out of breath, but not gasping. Consistency is infinitely more important than intensity. Start today. Take the stairs. Park in the farthest spot. Make walking a non-negotiable part of your day. Woo. Lifestyle renovation. Stopping the poison. You can do all of the first 4 steps perfectly, but if you don't address these final 2, you are leaving the door wide open for disaster. Smoking. This is non-negotiable. Smoking is arterial poison. Period. The thousands of chemicals in cigarette smoke directly damage your artery walls, cause massive inflammation, make your blood thick and sludgy, and promote the formation of clots. Quitting smoking is the single most powerful and immediate action you can take to prevent a stroke. Excessive alcohol. While moderate alcohol, especially red wine, has been debated, excessive alcohol is a clear and present danger. It can trigger an irregular heartbeat, atrial fibrillation, or AFib, which causes blood to pool and clot in the heart. That clot can then be ejected from your heart and travel straight to your brain, causing a massive stroke. Holiday heart is a real, clinical phenomenon. If you must drink, the guideline is no more than 2 drinks per day for men, and 1 per day for women. On top of this, you must prioritize sleep. This is when your body and your blood vessels do their repair work, and you must find a way to manage stress. As chronic stress keeps you in a state of high alert, high blood pressure, inflammatory fight-or-flight mode, your life is in your hands and your feet. Today, we have journeyed from the classic Hollywood image of a stroke to the subtle, silent, and far more common reality that this terrifying disease often sends its first warning signals to our feet. We've covered the 7 specific signs: sudden weakness in one leg, numbness or cotton ball sensations, foot drop or scuffing, stumbling over nothing, tremors or jerks at rest, a drunken loss of balance, and the thanks in advance, the warning shot that vanishes. We now know these are not just aging, they are desperate, life or death signals from our brain. We've also covered the 5-step battle plan to prevent this from ever happening: managing our blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol, getting consistent exercise, and stopping the poisons of smoking and excess alcohol. How you choose to interpret and act on these signs will determine your future. You can feel a momentary leg weakness, dismiss it as fatigue, and do nothing. In that case, that small, ignored sign will almost inevitably lead to a lifetime of regret and a devastating, irreversible disability. Or, you can use the knowledge you gained today. You can recognize that sign for what it is: a warning, a chance, a check engine light that gives you time to get to the mechanic before the engine explodes. In that case, that dangerous signal becomes the very thing that saves your life and protects your family from tragedy. The choice of which path to take is entirely yours. So, I want to leave you with one final, concrete, actionnable proposal, a habit you can start tomorrow morning. I call it the 3-minute morning brain foot check. You don't need any special equipment. It takes less time than it takes to brew a cup of coffee. As soon as you get out of bed, just 3 minutes. To see how well your brain and feet are communicating. The one-legged sit to stand. Sit in a firm chair. Cross your arms over your chest. Now, try to stand up using only your right leg. Sit back down. Now, try to stand up using only your left leg. Is one side dramatically weaker or more difficult than the other? This tests strength. The 30-second, eyes closed test. Stand on a firm floor. Feet together. Now, close your eyes and try to stand perfectly still for 30 seconds. When you close your eyes, you remove all visual cues, forcing you to rely only on your brain's inner balance system, cerebellum. Do you sway heavily? Do you feel like you're about to fall to one side? This tests balance. The sensation compare. Take your fingernail or a pen cap and lightly trace a line on the top of your right foot, then your left, then the sole of your right, and the sole of your left. Is the sensation crisp, clear, and identical on both sides? Or is one side dull? This tests sensation, the tandem walk. Imagine a straight line on your floor. For 10 steps, walk on that line, heel to toe, like a tightrope walker. Do you stumble? Do you have to step off the line? This tests coordination. That's it. 4 simple tests. If you do this every single morning, you will develop an intimate understanding of your body's baseline, and you will never miss the day. A subtle, dangerous change occurs. It will be the simplest and most powerful morning routine of your life. In our next discussion, we will take this a step further. We'll apply this knowledge directly to your diet. I'll be sharing a specific, practical guide on the artery cleanse, a Miracle Days menu to prevent stroke. We'll talk about exactly what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to keep your blood vessels clean and clear. I hope you'll join me for that. If the information I shared today was helpful, and if you believe it could help protect you or the people you love, I sincerely hope you will share it. Your support and your willingness to spread this knowledge is what gives this work its meaning. And finally, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from today? Please feel free to leave a comment. I read them all and find great strength in our shared community. Thank you for your time. Be well and be aware.